Okay, so we're going to get back to our fruit now. And what you always want to start out is when you are drawing, it's really good to use graphite. To start with a sketch that's graphite first and make it as light as possible. The camera may not pick up this as easily, but I'm even going to lighten it even more. If you have a thick outline of graphite and you add colored pencil over it, it locks the graphite in, especially if it's a yellow. If you use graphite and then you add yellow right over it, it still shows a transparency of the graphite and you can't erase it anymore. And it also becomes more like a muddy color, so more kind of dull and flat-like. So again, when you're using graphite, you want to work very lightly. And even if your hand isn't as light, erase it again. So you have a really soft image. And again, I don't know if you can see the apple, but here's the top of the apple, the round part, and here's the bottom of this apple. So very soft, I can see with my eye. We're going to work with this apple here. Now, the way the camera's picking up is you're getting the top perspective, I'm getting the side perspective. So just know that we'll be seeing a different shape of that particular apple. Now we know automatically we would grab red, right, to use an apple, but we're gonna start very light in our application. Colored pencil is very time consuming. There's a lot of layering because you're building up the colors and values. Erasing is not as forgiving with colored pencil. You can sometimes erase, but it won't be as white as the paper. So we are going to build very lightly, and we're going to start with our lightest value. Now for this concept is you're going to use only your primaries and secondaries to get all that we need for this particular color of this fruit. We may not use all as much as primaries or as much as secondaries and more than the other, but the idea is that many times when I'm drawing something, especially from nature, more than likely I'm holding my primaries and secondaries, and some of them come in more than others. So we are using different color schemes for this. So I'm going to start layering it with a very light yellow. And again, I'm holding my pencil in the center, and I'm just making really soft circular shapes. Very light application. But I'm going to be building from here. So when I have yellow on the base, as I keep going, I will add some oranges, some reds, and then we're going to get to the cool sides, the darker colors on the color wheel. Okay, so here's a very light application of the yellow. I know that is very, very light, and that's a good thing. Because we're such in light mode, I still have time where I can erase or adjust anything that I need to. Next lightest color is going to be the orange for this piece. So we're going to start adding orange, and I'm going to be very conscious of this particular color that's on this apple. I have some lighter tones over here versus some darker. So just be aware when you are starting to draw this to keep consciously looking at the object. And so again, I'm having a light application of the orange. I'm making just big circular strokes, very light, so you still see the tooth of the paper. And I am working more towards that corner portion that I just showed you because it has a lighter value attached to it. Also, if you find your graphite lines are still too dark, this is a good time to erase them. For example, I feel that some of this graphite line is a little dark. I'm going to erase them, because as you keep adding value, it's going to be more difficult to remove that medium. Okay, so continuing to add, you can even hold your pencil like this to have less control in terms of the sharpness. And now you're just using purely the edge of this particular medium. I am going in a hatching mode, so I am just going straight. I'm following the shape of the object. So again, you want to take your time as you build the value, be conscious. What's interesting about this apple is that and again, the camera might not be picking this up, but it does have a lot of lines in it. Let me show you guys this other apple. I know we're not rendering this, but this apple purely has a lot of interesting lines, which is kind of neat because then that kind of tells us where to put the pencil of the direction. Okay, so I'm building value again. I'm just making big circular strokes, and I just want to show you how these circular strokes are looking. We're going to go back to this extra side here. So my strokes are looking like this, just so you're aware of how that looks. Yes, I'm pressing harder to kind of just show for the sake of the camera, but this is the way that I am building value. So large circular strokes continuing, they almost become these hatching marks, and they just overlap one another so it becomes more seamless and soft in the transitions. Okay, so as I continue to build this, I am going to now start working with the red. Red is a very strong color. It's going to start showing pretty quickly the value. Again, I'm making circular shapes around the piece, the apple meaning. I don't want to go dark quickly because our colored pencils, especially if it's Prismacolor, they get very waxy. They could look like an oil painting, which is amazing, but the only thing with that is when you build it up too quickly, you can't keep adding value. It just stops adding colors to it. So you want to first really build it up very richly and then continue on if necessary to build it up if you want to have that smooth look, which we'll discuss that as well. Okay, and again, I'm being very conscious of where the lights and darks are in terms of colors. Getting more of my edge of the apple in. I recommend, if you can, to work on a table and then put this at an angle on your lap. I'm working flat right now for the sake of this video, so it shows a little bit more clear. But for me to work flat, it feels a little bit different. So if you can, again, sit at a table, but then just have this on your lap, so it's at an angle. It's almost like we're at an easel. Okay. Now, once we have our our warm colors or our light colors, I'm gonna go back and keep adding the same. So I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow, keeping it still very light.